All right. This is DeFi and Conquer. I want to welcome everyone and thank you for joining. I'm Matt. I work on ecosystem development as part of Nervos. And with me, I have Ben Morris, Head of Business Development at Nervos, Jeff Kuan, Business Development Lead at Terra, Marc Zeller, Integrations Lead at Aave, and Johann I wish I could pronounce your last name.
Age is good, Johnny. Whichever you're feeling.
Johann Head of Integration at Chainlink. Thank you guys for joining today. So when I was preparing for this, I kind of went through relevant headlines. And one thing that I found is that beginning in 2020, there was less than $1 billion locked in DeFi protocols. Beginning of this year, it was 15 billion. And now just a couple months later, we're close to $40 billion locked in DeFi. And there's another story that happened recently that I think kind of demonstrates what, why is all this happening? And that's the RobinHood, scandal or trading freeze, whatever you call it. But they're facing 90 lawsuits, and their CEO was hauled in front of the Congress in the US. And he apologized, and there was a quote from a congresswoman: Americans feel the system is stacked against them, and no matter what, Wall Street wins. And with that, I'll kind of, move into our first question, and that's, more and more people have noticed that there are all these applications on DeFi, but there's still kind of a sense within the industry that DeFi still has a lot of room to grow. So can you share, what you are seeing from your project's end in terms of how you will attract a user and get them, into DeFi? And first, this question will go to Marc.
Hey, thank you for inviting me. Well, the first answer is that, you can ask for a project, but at the end of the day, it's all the same project, because Aave, we are a lending platform, a liquidity protocol. We are here to organize liquidity in a decentralized way on Ethereum, but we are one of the biggest users of the chain press feed. So Johann, we work together quite a lot. We also onboard assets in a decentralized way. If you have some Aave tokens, you are one of the owner of the Aave protocol. So a synthetic asset from Terra is very interesting. And that's something that we are looking very closely. And of course, and I think it's going to be one of the main topic of tonight, scalability, new layers, layer 2, maybe reconcentrate things on layer 1s. And there's a lot of interest as well on Nervos. So yeah, we are different pieces of the same project in my eyes, and the common project is to make finance differently, a more open finance, a more decentralized finance, and something that has the same set of rules for every single actors, and rules that are immutable and defined by the rules of the protocols. So I would start the conversation on this basis.
Got it. And Jeff, from Terra's end, how do you guys see attracting general users and getting them into DeFi?
Yeah, so I think, at the highest level, definitely agree with Marc in that, we're all in this together, and a big aim for all the projects should be how to kind of expand the pie of DeFi to, at the top. I think at Terra specifically, we're also focused on kind of the next billion users, right? So it's okay, once crypto within itself can continue to grow, but where the real users are traditional finance users, or kind of all those RobinHood users who got burned. How can we attract those users into this ecosystem? And so one thing that we spend a lot of time on is thinking about how can we create an amazing user experience for users that they are very familiar with, and really maybe abstract away some of the complexity and a lot of the the 10 steps that you need to, make a flash loan or whatever, for example, and create a very easy way for users to interact with all of this technology.
Got it. Johann, I know Chainlink is kind of in the Oracle's business, but can you share how Chainlink facilitates DeFi?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. I mean, look, on my side, I think as Mark said, we're all on the same side here, right? This side is basically how can we propose something different? How can we propose an alternative to what exists today, to the systems that have, been running for years and years, which created all of this crisis, which, all of this stuff, right? Now, something very important to me is it seems like DeFi is on the right side of history, right? Like everything that's happening seems to be favoring us. Even if we were to stop doing anything right now with a smart contract running on mainnet, like we would still gain users. People would still converge to us. Why? Because the RobinHood stuff is happening, because the Fed in the US is printing money, you all know the memes. Like we seem to be on the right side of history. And I think the most important thing right now is all of these people converging to DeFi need a good user experience. And what they need is to make sure that every time they use something or they put money into a protocol, they can be sure this money won't be lost, right? They can be sure they won't get liquidated for no reason, or they won't start losing funds without, because of a technical issue or because of a hack, right? Sure. So the biggest way Chainlink has been helping DeFi and helping DeFi grow is through our price feeds and through our oracles and through creating the most secure systems we could to welcome in all of these people who are getting into the ecosystem. Because we see all of these people like Aave, like Synthetics, like Terra, all of these great companies which are building something new, right? And these companies, they rely on smart contracts for security, but they also rely on oracles, right? And you need to get the two parts very well. And once you get them right, you can ensure that the people going into this ecosystem have a safe experience. It wouldn't be good for DeFi if every week we had a hack happening because of oracle-related issues or stuff like this, right? So this is our biggest goal. We onboard more people by providing a secure ecosystem. And when the Fed goes down for like a day, like last week, well, DeFi, guess what, is still running without an issue. That's how you get people into the ecosystem, and that's what we're focusing on. Yeah.
That's great. Ben, anything to add from your end in terms of attracting general users, getting them into DeFi?
Yeah, I think they're all important points, and I completely agree with this idea that we're all in it together. I would say if you take a step back from that, though, we don't have DeFi users right now that are able to seamlessly interact with applications on different blockchains, right? So I feel like we're talking about getting general users into this ecosystem, getting general users in DeFi, but existing DeFi users right now have horrible experience. And you just need to experiment a little bit and you can see exactly what I mean. It's very cumbersome going through different wallets and getting different tokens that you need for transaction fees and gas, etc. Right? And so I think that's a problem that Nervos is trying to solve and is well positioned to solve, because our architecture is quite unique in the sense that you can have flexible crypto primitives, and to not sort of go down that rabbit hole too far. Essentially what that means for the end user is that you can have an existing wallet, you can be on any other blockchain, and you wouldn't need to go through the hassle of moving your assets to another chain before you can start interacting with applications like a swap, etc. You could seamlessly use your existing wallet and interact with an application on Nervos. So that's how we want to solve this sort of critical problem. And I feel like these problems need to be solved before we get to a point where we can attract general users and the general public, because it's still a very cumbersome experience.
Got it. Yeah, it does feel like we need to move further down the adoption curve. Like we exist very much now in that innovator, early adopter phase, but yeah, it will take some time to move down it. So the next question goes to kind of, a lot of these instruments that we're seeing today are inspired by traditional finance instruments. So Aave's credit system, or on Terra, you have synthetic assets with mere finance. What do you guys see that's kind of coming down, in the future, like new instruments that will be inspired by traditional finance that exist in a DeFi context? Anyone, feel free to jump in.
I think one thing that I want to point out is that the current financial tools we have in traditional finance are defined by centuries of optimization. It's something that mostly works and that is well designed. The issue we have with traditional finance are not from the math itself or the tools itself, but more in the system itself. The inefficiency of the system, the middlemen, the commissions, the regulation that maybe slow things down or maybe only limit to certain actors certain actions. And basically, you don't need to reinvent everything because the basis is quite interesting as because it's came from centuries of optimization. But if you put those tools inside a system that is auditable, that is verifiable, that is open to everyone and permissionless, you have financial theories, something that is much better and that anybody in the world can access with exactly the same set of rules.
Yeah, I think Marc raises a really good point, right? And I agree with that. But also I feel like a lot of traditional instruments or traditional uses of finance are also governed or restricted by these things. And what I'm really interested in is seeing what we can do very, very differently, right? And there are some projects that are sort of experimenting. I think there's a project called RAI, which is like a stable coin that's not backed to any specific dollar, for example. And I think that's a sort of experimentation that I'm very, very excited about in this space, because they're not traditional instruments, or they don't come from traditional finance, and they're uniquely enabled using blockchain technology. But to answer your question directly, though, I think things like fixed rate lending is something that I'm very excited about. And I know there's a few projects that are working on this. So the ability to build like a corporate debt marketplace would I think be very, very interesting. It would get institutions involved. I think would get a lot of different players that will be coming into this space. Though obviously it's a hard problem to tackle now, but that's something I'm personally keeping an eye on.
Yeah, I think those are both great points. I'm happy to talk about something that we're building at Terra that we're launching imminently, called Anchor Protocol, which is a high yield savings product. And at Terra, we really believe that savings will be the gateway to get like real mass adoption from like the next billion, 2 billion traditional finance users. Yeah, like the way that we are thinking about building this is as like a Stripe for savings, right? So similarly to how Stripe can embed payments functionality into any company with 7 lines of code or less, we are thinking about building this as a savings as a product, where any fintech company or any application who has users and who has idle user funds can integrate Anchor Protocol and offer it as a product to its users. And we think that it really brings like the benefits of something or like the benefits of blockchain and crypto into a user experience that people like really understand and can get tangible benefits from immediately.
Is it similar to, I know some banks will have like a roundup thing, like when you make a purchase, they'll round it up and they'll put the difference into your savings. Is it something like that where you're integrating on like the commerce side and then giving the user savings?
I think that's like a potential use case for sure. I think the way that we've built it is more generalized in that a application can integrate it in whichever way that they want. And that use case I think is one way that it could be done.
Awesome.
I mean, look, for me, it's pretty quick, actually. I think I fully agree with Marc here. Like, in my view, if Red Heads, for instance, the financial system built a few years ago, before the global financial crisis, all the CTOs and all of this stuff would have been more transparent, right? And all of this transparency asymmetry which existed, where some parties knew what was in this for instruments and some parties didn't know, this wouldn't have existed. What's beautiful here in DeFi is anyone can edit the code. If they see something fishy, they can just put it out on Twitter and stuff. Funnily enough, like I think the great thing here is that everyone can build financial instruments without having all of these all of these processes around it, using some banking APIs and having to go through all the barriers we have in the financial world. Like, it's so much easier for people to build. Like, you can just be an engineer and start building a financial instrument, and you can financial primitive, which is really amazing, right? Funnily enough, the biggest thing I've seen, which which doesn't exist in the traditional world for sure, is flash loans from our friends at Aave. And I think like, that's a great example of what you can do in this ecosystem, right? Like, these flash loans are amazing. People think of them as really evil tool because there have been some hacks and stuff. I trust that in 2-3 years, people will start realizing all the potential, and they're already doing so. Like, people are already using them actively. But I think in 2-3 years, the number of stuff you'll be able to do with flash loans will be amazing. It will just be like mind-blowing. Like, already being able to migrate from a protocol V2 to V3 using flash loans, this type of stuff is super useful. And it just opens the door to so many more industries. Like, it just makes markets much more efficient, because anyone can start arbitraging any inefficiency away, right? So it's it's just a beautiful system and ecosystem we're seeing emerge. Yeah.
So on kind of maybe even piggybacking on that, I guess the idea of, say, like arbitrage through flash loans. So we already see like a number of pain points for, say, like the average user coming in, such as, transaction failure, or, in this arbitrage, example, you might see very high gas paid to get that arb opportunity instead of somebody else. So, in your guys' kind of day to day, when you look at these, kind of like the challenges we have to growing, what do you think of them, and what do you think that we might do kind of to address them, or how those things play out in the future? Anyone can take this one.
I can take it, but guys, you can go.
So just to be clear, Matt, you're referring to, let's say, gas prices and network congestion and this kind of issues, right? Or
yeah, exactly. And I was trying to say, like, with the you have this magical opportunity of, say, a flash loan that anyone can extract value out with putting no capital up, but because it's a permissionless system, anyone can do that, and that could be very lucrative. So maybe a person who, say, just wants to make a simple transfer, that they're sharing the system. So yeah.
I think there's several things. Sorry, yeah.
No, go ahead.
I think there's several things. The first thing is that in a public blockchain, having a slot inside the block is valuable, because that's the security model. That's the Satoshi Nakamoto consensus presented in the white paper in 2008, and it works. And basically, Bitcoin is more than almost 13 years old now, and it works. And secure $1 trillion so far, so it works. But what we have to understand is that in 6 months, 98% of the user, they will not use what we call the settlement layer. Like what we call Ethereum right now, will not be used by most of the users in 6 months or in 1 year. And I don't know when you will publish the recording of this discussion, if it's in a week or if it's in a month or whatever. The scalability solution are here already. Like Synthetics did their experimentation for a minting on Optimism on the 15th of January. Optimism and the OVM team announced their mainnet for March, and I think that there's good reason to believe it will be done. There's more and more people working on Polygon. There's more and more people working on all the L2. There's very strong L1 solutions that are coming. Today, Compound released the prototype on Web 10 of their Compound Cash chain, which is another L1. All the scalability solution is here. So what we call, and the main audience of this talk, the people that will look at this panel, they are the main audience, and they will use one of these scalability solutions, but for them, it will be called DeFi. Because at the end of the day, great technology that is sufficiently advanced, it's completely invisible for the end user. I use the internet every day. We are using Zoom right now as a medium to talk between each other. We don't don't care about the DNS, we don't care about the IP address, we don't care about the port of our computers, all this kind of geeky stuff. It's very interesting. A lot of smart people work on that, but they were smart enough to build something that we don't have to realize exists to use it. And it's going to be exactly the same thing for DeFi.
Yeah, I think, shameless plug here, but Nervos is a blockchain that's designed for layer 2. So it was from the get-go, it was designed to support an ecosystem of layer 2s. And I think, you know, DeFi obviously is moving to layer 2 with rollups, but there's going to be other use cases that require different kinds of layer 2 solutions, right? For some, you know, with rollups, there are some limitations in terms of throughput. So Plasma has much higher throughput. So, you know, there's going to be different use cases. There's going to be different kinds of layer 2s, and they're all going to coexist. And for Nervos, we're basically banking on that, right? We've built it from the get-go to be able to basically be this layer 1 that can support all of these layer 2s and therefore be this ultra secure proof of work settlement layer. So yeah, what Marc says, I wholeheartedly agree with. And I think that there's enough momentum right now that the whole layer 2 discussion of whether or not, oh, is this the right way to go? Do we do it natively on layer 1, etc.? I think that's probably going to be become less of a discussion as more and more projects end up moving to different types of layer 2 solutions.
I know a lot of the momentum. Oh, go ahead, Johann. Go.
Yeah, sure. Look, it's going to be very hard to disagree with anything on this, you know, this kind of panel. So I obviously I do fully agree there. I think Marc, you touched on a very good point. These settlement layers and, you know, these questions about settlements, they apply to Ethereum. They obviously apply to Bitcoin too, right? And the thing which I find extremely kind of exciting is that, you know, the future for every blockchain, for every chain, you will see this kind of divide between the asset and the chain, right? And for instance, I see Bitcoin as being in later stages, you know, probably people will use it as sound money, right? So probably the soundest money around for many people. And they will need to have this money work for them, right? So they will need to put them onto layer 2, they will need to put them onto other protocols to start kind of getting interest on this money, to start, you know, using it for lending, for borrowing. So absolutely, we won't have only, you know, one chain to rule them all. I think that's the consensus today. And we will see assets flowing freely from one chain to another, right? And this will force us to scale very quickly because, you know, you will have all of these different chains where you can conduct financial transactions. Why would you go on the chain which is the most expensive? You know, it doesn't make sense. Like you have this free market of chains, you just choose, and you know, for very big transactions, then you can settle on the main one, but not before. And something important. So on the Chainlink side for us, we've been dealing with you know, Ethereum scalability for a very long time. Obviously, our node operators have to put prices on the Ethereum chain because that's where all the DeFi applications are. So, you know, for a network of 21 nodes, we used to have our 21 node operators. They had to each put their answer on the chain where it would be aggregated, right? And this worked great, obviously, and this still works great. However, the gas fees are obviously have pushed us to go to a new model. So for 1.5 years, we've been working on what we call off-chain reporting. It's basically a way to aggregate solutions off-chain. And instead of sending 21 answers to the chain, you only send one aggregated answer with all the signatures from the node operators, from the oracles who participated in the chain to the, you know, blockchain for settlement, right? For settlement of the price of the transaction. And the idea here is that in the market we are in today, where there is not much blocker to innovation, whatever issues we face, because I've seen a lot of, you know, panic around blockchains will never scale. Look, the prices are too crazy, they're too expensive. Like companies like us, they will always find ways to innovate, right? Companies like the ones at this panel, they will always find ways because we're tasked here with a very important problem. How do we get people to have a system they can rely on for their money. That's not a trivial task. That's not something you can take lightly, right? And all the issues we've been facing, such as scalability and stuff, these are things which can easily be solved. Not easily, but which are solved in time, right? And I think off-chain reporting is really a showcase of this. Like, we had this problem, and today our Oracle networks are 90% more efficient. We're able to put much more data to the chain. And I think that's where the industry will be heading. Every time we go into a problem like this one about scalability, we'll find better ways, maybe through off-chain reporting, maybe through L2s like Optimistic, Arbitrum, Stake, Polygon. That's really where I think we go, and seeing all of this scale and all of this work is extremely exciting in my view. Yeah.
Yeah, great answers. I'm wondering, a lot of users still use centralized exchanges, and that comes from they're being easy to use, or being able to access pretty much any chain within a single system. I'm curious how you guys see, I guess, like the necessity to having like a simple cross-chain kind of world for DeFi to kind of overtake centralized exchanges, even more so than we already see.
I'm happy to start here. So I think, like, obviously centralized platforms are really against the ethos of the ecosystem that we're trying to build here. That being said, I think it's a mistake to focus only on bringing users directly into DeFi from like a world that they are very used to right now. Mm-hmm. I think there will be always a percentage of the population that will always feel more comfortable with like permission products that have like login KYC, where like they feel that maybe like their money is being kept safe by like a company or like a corporation that can like maybe guarantee some of the funds. And so that's like why Coinbase is worth $100 billion, right? And they're IPOing at that price. And so like, while I do think bringing users into DeFi is the end goal, I don't think we should be ignoring centralized platforms. And I think it is a good channel right now for user acquisition, right? So if you look at like Vesper Finance, which just launched, I think like this week, they have like I think over $100 million in TVL, right? So they're like doing really well. And I think there will always be a world where people go to centralized platforms first before making the leap. And so I think it is important to focus on that.
Okay.
I think they're really good points, but I also think that people want to use centralized exchanges because the experience is very similar to what they get in other asset classes, right? Crypto doesn't become this sort of scary unknown asset class, because if you use Binance or any of these other exchanges, it's similar to trading Forex or equities. The experience is very, very familiar, and there's that added comfort that goes with that. And then I think the point that I think Jeff or Matt, one of you guys raised, is the convenience of being able to use to interact with multiple blockchains, right? So that's obviously a big problem that needs to be solved, and you can do that through centralized exchanges fairly easily. I think we also spoke about sort of the fear of losing funds, which I think is a very real fear. But if you look at the percentage of funds lost compared to TVL, it's actually a very, very small percentage, right? So there have been numerous hacks, but the amount of money that's actually lost is a fraction of the amount of money that's locked into the system. And I think there's an education element that's required there as well. There's a little bit more fear than is justified at this point. So I think we need to convince the masses that they're not going to be incurring a larger element of risk. And the processes that they're used to is not going to be wildly different to what they would interact with on sort of DeFi applications. So I think these 2 points are going to take a little bit of time to work out. And I think to Jeff's point, decentralized exchanges are not going to be they're still going to be relevant for years to come. But we should see sort of more of a shift as DeFi applications start to improve and the interoperability issue is managed and the user experience is managed, and there are less hacks and people are getting more familiar and educated on the asset class, etc.
Marc or Johann, anything to add?
Oh, a lot of things. But I think one of the first things we should expect in 2021 is that the frontiers will blur quite a bit between CeFi and DeFi. So we all know what DeFi is: permissionless finance. Basically, anyone can access. It's on chain. There's no pause button. There's no stop button. Nobody can tamper with your funds. Nobody can alter one of your trading position. That's like the core value. And I think that's something that will always exist, like never gonna stop at some point. But what will happen is that at the end of the day, on chain, if you put on a smart contract a whitelist, and in order to be in the whitelist, you have to show your ID, it's still decentralized because it's on Ethereum. There's no stop button. But if you want to be in the private club, you have to prove maybe your origin of funds, or maybe that you are accredited investors, or that you are not part of a bad guy for any kind of jurisdiction or whatever. And if you do that, you don't have permissionless, you have permissioned finance, but still decentralized finance. Where is the limit? And that's maybe a financial product that may interest a lot of new actors in the ecosystem that are more institutional, that are saying the technology is super great, but we cannot put our money everywhere. So maybe instead of depositing in the backends of DeFi that are the protocol that exist right now, they will deposit maybe in other sets of smart contracts that if you want to deposit there, or if you want to borrow there, you will need to check the compliance box of whatever they prefer to have. And is it still DeFi? Is this becoming CeFi? We don't know. And there's a lot of DeFi projects that are working on licensings to provide actually a financial service to their users. If you have a debit card with a financial protocol, I will not say names, but that's something that is probably happening. Is it centralized finance? Is it still DeFi? Because your funds, if you want to have this debit card, you will need to show your ID. You will need to show your origin of funds. If you want to take maybe a loans, you will have to have some proof that you have some income. Is that CeFi? But all your money, all your decentralized saving accounts, it's inside a fully decentralized protocol. Where is the frontiers? And what will happen this year is that the lines and the frontier will blur, because at the end of the day, DeFi is about leaving you with the options. You have the option to take the full decentralized permissionless route. You have the option to take maybe a less permissionless, maybe a more permissioned, because your compliance department will be more happy about it. And why not? At the end of the day, it's all about freedom.
It's a great sentiment. Johann,
I disagree now. Yeah, I fully agree with Marc. And I think actually, Marc, I think we spoke very quickly about this 2 weeks ago or something. Yeah, look, we're on the same page there, and that's really important. I think the system we had today didn't give a before crypto, before all of this stuff. We didn't have a choice, right? Either you go into it, or you go and you live in the woods, in the forest somewhere, right? Here with crypto, we have the option, like it's a free market in the end, right? You're going to have a bunch of choices, and you have a bunch of platforms you can interact on, and you have to choose based on your security risk, based on what kind of protection you want, based on the speed you're looking to get. You'll have all of these parameters, and then you decide. It's a completely free market economy, and that's what I find beautiful with it, right? As long as no one is forcing you to do anything, and you have the choice to do whatever you want, based on what is best for you, then go ahead, and people will do what is best for them in the end. That's how free markets work. The best product always wins out in the end. And maybe in the system we are in today, there is no best product, because there are so many different versions of what people want that have so many parameters to choose from. They'll just choose, whatever is best for them. And this could be centralized, this could be decentralized, this could be a bit of both, whatever, we'll see. But what's important is for people to innovate and to have the right to choose, basically. I fully agree with this.
Yeah, I like this, where we've kind of landed here with this blending of DeFi and CeFi, especially in the age of Binance Smart Chain. Yeah, we're already there. So kind of coming to the end here, and yeah, in the interest of time, and also in the interest of clarity, because I think this is one of the big questions. So I'm going to kind of push you guys to provide quick answers so that we get straight to the point. How how do we improve kind of like the usability, the user experience of whether you want to say DeFi, CeFi, just crypto in general, when somebody comes in, you know, how do we improve it?
I think
Don't
the
all
most
talk at once.
yeah the most important things that we will tackle as an ecosystem and all together is to make DeFi accessible to everybody back again. So right now DeFi is maybe for 5-6 figure portfolios, because it's a very good problem to have at the end of the day, because on a public blockchain the transaction fee are just the equilibrium between the supply, the size of the block, and the demand, the people that are willing to pay for those interaction with the blockchain. So transaction fees are always defined by people, by a market saying, we are happy to pay this price at this moment. But the issue is that we created, and I think all of us in this panel, we created DeFi as a financial tool for everybody, for every single human being, even if you have like a 2 or 3 figure portfolio. And that's going to be the main focus of this spring, bring back DeFi to 3 figures portfolio. And it will happen. The technology is already here. We are making progress every day, and people listening to us in the end of the summer 2021 will understand what I'm saying right now.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, look, on my side, you know, we're quite lucky at Chainlink. Like, we can rely on people, you know, like Aave, like Terra, all of these applications, and Nervos, obviously, to be creating end user based products, right? On our side, we provide, you know, what's important behind, which is price feeds, which are oracles. For us, we will keep focusing on making security, you know, like secure oracles, making sure no one has any oracle issue, oracle hacks. Those are the most important things, right? The worst UX you can get in the world is losing all your money. I mean, that's talking about bad UX here. Oh, I just put some money into it. I just lost everything because I have to hack or something, right? So that's the most important part for us. Obviously, very important, there will be many scalability solutions going out, you know, many new blockchains, many new L2s, and DeFi ecosystems growing on all of those. So I'm really looking forward to be on Terra, to be on Nervos with Chainlink, and be able to support all of the DeFi applications that will grow on there, right? Have our oracles, which can be used by developers. And when developers can build easily, usually they tend to offer very good, very usable in the, you know, in the limit of what's possible with gas fees and stuff, products to the ecosystem, right? So this will be the focus for Chainlink, and I think it's a very important focus for all of these great applications to do what they need to do for, you know, the next financial system of tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, like, just echoing what these two guys have said, I think like scalability, cost of transactions, like obviously that's going to be the main barrier for getting new user adoption and continued growth of this industry. I think, again, like I've said in a previous answer, I think one thing we're really focused on is like, how can we abstract away the complexity behind all of this and create a user experience that users are really, really comfortable with, right? And I think that's the route that like some of these CeFi players have taken. Like, they're creating products that people are comfortable with, know how to use, and are using that as like a stepping stone to bring people within the ecosystem. And so that's something that we think about every day, and are really striving to build products that can you know, make things as easy as possible for these new users.
Yeah, the issue with being last is that everything's already been said. But I think there's a couple of more points, and I wholeheartedly agree with everything that's been said so far. But I would focus perhaps on decentralized ID, and I think that that's something that specifically needs to be solved for, and that's something that you know, us folks at Nervos are very actively trying to do, and we have some things coming up for that. And I think in order to solve for these problems, you know, to go from fully decentralized to go from like a very centralized system to a fully decentralized system is a very big gap. And at times, you know, we can find ourselves sort of trying to bridge that gap by providing sort of hybrid solutions. So for example, with ID, if you were able to authenticate using your email, that could be something that could help onboard, you know, a number of users that would have not have been onboarded, right? So I think, you know, that would be just on top of the earlier points that have been made, but I think that would be something that that needs to be solved for as well until we get a much smoother sort of user experience.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's about all the time we have. Yeah, really appreciate you guys joining today and sharing all your thoughts and insights. And yeah, it really is an exciting thing that we're a part of. So yeah, really looking forward to how all this all develops. And yeah, really appreciate you guys sharing all your thoughts.